So the Barrie Colts and Niagara IceDogs set to resume their rivalry in the playoffs as the series gets underway Thursday night at the Saddlein Arena for Game 1, and then Game 2 not until Monday because the home show is taking over the Saddlein Arena. But we'll get some hockey before the end of the week, and today I wanted to be joined by Ted Lehman, the play-by-play voice of the Niagara IceDogs on the radio side of things. And Ted, it's been a few years since playoff hockey has been played in the city of St. Catharines. The fan base must be pretty excited to get back to the postseason.
They're pretty amped up about that. But can you believe in a history that's now spanned 17 years, this is only the second playoff series ever between the Barrie Colts and the Niagara IceDogs?
Yeah, you got to go back to 2016, I believe. That was the conference final when the Ice Dogs swept that series.
Yeah, I was going to say the Ice Dogs on a four-game winning streak going into the game for game one on Thursday. So we're going to hang our head on that.
And this Ice Dogs team surprised many at the start of the season, challenging for top spot in the Central and the Eastern Conference. So we know that this team is capable of putting up points, getting the wins. But both February and March hasn't really been too kind for these guys.
Well, what they went through, and again, my humble opinion, and somebody high up in the organization said it best. They weren't as good as their record before Christmas, and they're clearly not as bad as their record after Christmas, and they are probably a year ahead of schedule in terms of what's going on. I put a lot of it off on the fact the MVP was Owen Flores. He goes down in the middle of February. They maybe had two or three games in February they should have won, and it just didn't work out. Other than that, all you faced was teams, and there's six of them in the Eastern Conference, Mike, that have all loaded up. You and I were talking on the weekend. I figured out with those six teams, they are somewhere between 14 and 20 draft picks. They surrendered to go for it this year. That's over only the next 4 years. It's not like in the old days when I could trade a draft pick in 2032. You got to stay in a four year window. So they faced quite simply, and the Barrie Colts are an example, teams that had more talent than they did.
But when you look at the March 1st game against the London Knights, that was quite the story. The big win on home ice. I know a lot of fans get pretty excited when they see the London Knights lose, and particular, I'm sure for Niagara, that was a big statement win for this team.
Well, Mike, I'll give you a little hint because I know this is going on your broadcast. On our broadcast, we're going to have the top 10 highlights of this season. Try to figure out what number one is going to be. And I think the highlight goal is going to be replayed about four times because it was a Kevin He hat trick goal to make it 6-4. And there were busloads of London fans in the building. And I know you guys have suffered through that. I mean, I remember the one series that what got decided was like a second left. Heartbreak. That's why I love going to Saginaw now because they actually have a flag that talks about at what time Saginaw scored the goal that knocked the London Knights out of the Memorial Cup championship. So, yeah, try to figure out where my alliances lay. Mike, it's pretty easy.
But yeah, like it goes to show though that this Niagara Ice Dogs team, like I know they've had a lot of different injuries. Flores, he's been out in, but it just goes to show that this is a core that has a lot of talent. It's a lot of potential going forward, and these guys are capable of winning really against anybody if they can put in the 60 minutes.
Ryan Robrick scored seven more goals this season, even being out a couple of times due to injury, than any second year 17-year-old ever did in Ice Dogs history. And you're talking about the likes of Ryan Stromes that went through there and Brendan Perlini's, Josh Hosang's. The all-time leading point getter and goal scorer is Andrew Agozzino. He is right now, he's eclipsing all of them. You talk about Kevin He and the work he puts in. They've got a veteran in Andre Loshko, and, we've met. I do numbers. I think the Colts have 302 man games of experience in the playoffs going into this one. The Ice Dogs have 84. Now, most of those are between Noah Van Vliet, who they got a trade, and Andre Loshko, who came in from the queue. The one thing, Mike, is I'm not predicting an upset, in case you're going to ask me, but I will tell you this. I don't think any team wants to play the Ice Dogs because they're not one of the six teams going for it. For Ben Boudreau, for the ownership, for the management, it's house money. Everything you get to do in the playoffs. If you don't win, nobody expected it. If you cause some grief, you make a lot of people really nervous.
And then, of course, there's two former Barrie Colts playing for the Niagara Ice Dogs. They're going to be pretty passionate about this series with Jack Browdy and Blair Scott. And we also saw that over the weekend, the final meeting, Scott and Browdy both kind of chirping a little bit there, getting reacquainted with their old teammates.
It got a little bit ugly, and I was kind of surprised because you and I were laughing about, oh, we get to do an exhibition game because basically that's what we were looking at with the line that both teams put on the ice. But it got really aggressive, and I don't know. And I will say this: does that play in the favor of the Colts? You don't want to get the other guys angry because the funny thing about youth, it's not smart enough to know the predicament that it's in. So sometimes you can wake up the sleeping dog and all of a sudden good things can happen. But again, I'm going on the record. You're not going to get me to do this one. I'm not predicting an upset. I do believe there is still some surprises coming up, and one of them is with Ben Boudreau behind the bench, Mike. I think he's one of the great minds I've run into. He might have a plan that started about 10 days ago that he basically put into place that he'll kind of get into when game one arrives.
And I know you don't want to make the prediction, but when you look at this lineup, who do you think could be the player that's going to step forward and really lead this push to maybe upsetting the Barrie Colts on this team?
Well, you mentioned Jack Brody. I think he's been top 20 as far as defense goes. I think Owen Flores, because you go to the birth of the Ice Dogs. Well, before I ever knew anything about the team, they were a number two, and I think they got knocked out by number seven that won the conference. It was the Sudbury Wolves. Sebastian Dam, the goaltender, stood on his head, knocked out the soon to be Niagara Ice Dogs. So, what did Dave Brown, the GM, do the next year? He acquired Sebastian Dam. I think he didn't want it to happen again. Goaltending can make a difference. Barry's got a very interesting situation. I got a funny feeling I know who's going to start, but to me, it's still a tough question because if I'm looking at the two Barry goaltenders, I'm saying Ben Horebeck had, maybe the better season than even the World Junior American goaltender in Sam Hillebrand. And sometimes depth in goaltending in the playoffs, I think, can even bite you in the backside because people start thinking, should we make a change? And you got to be careful when it comes down to
Yeah, and I don't think Marty Williamson's going to tip his hand on the goaltender right up until he hands out the lineups Thursday night.
that. Well, I still laugh, Mike, at the fact that, again, you've done this for a long time. I've done this for a long time. I love talking to the Marty Williamsons of the world. And I don't mean they're not to be trusted, but you don't take them at their word because when he took over the Barrie Colts 2.0, I said to him one time in an interview, Dale Howardchuk was best known for his cheating, which meant if you got a D that touches the puck, your forwards are blown out of the zone. And I said, Marty, are you going to continue that? And he went, no, I don't think so. It'll be kind of, oh, come on. I mean, you guys look like 747s coming across off the tarmac as soon as the team gets the puck. So I love the man, and I've got great conversations with him. I thought we had a great relationship, but you're not always going to get, the exact story, no more than you get it from Ben Boudreau if you asked him a question.
Oh, and that's just the fun of the playoffs. It starts to become the game within the game in any given series. So it's going to be a ton of fun. Colts and Ice Dogs meeting in the playoffs, and it's going to be fun even just to see the Meridian Center being loud for games 3 and 4 once the playoffs return.
What are you looking at in terms of the Barrie end of things? Is there going to be travel? Are you going to have, you're going to have busloads making their way down and heading into the Meridian Center potentially?
Well, I know I saw the post that the Ice Dogs they're going to have their fan bus coming up, and apparently there's been a questionnaire going among Barrie Colt fans. So we'll have to wait and see if we get Colt fans down to Meridian Center. But either way, it's going to be a ton of fun. And Ted, I appreciate you coming on here, and we'll see you back at the rink.
Mike, I appreciate how well you do what you do. Always have time, and I look forward to how about 7 games?
Hey, you never know.
You never know.
So that's Niagara Ice Dogs radio play-by-play voice, Ted Lehman. It's always great to catch up with Ted with the great stories that he has from his experience around the Ontario Hockey League. And, this is probably going to be a more entertaining series than what I think some people are giving credit for. As we talked about there, this Niagara team, they were exceeding expectations in the first half and maybe underperforming a little here in the second half. But either way, it's always great when the Colts and the Ice Dogs go head-to-head. And the plan is to go on the road and do some post-game recaps in the Meridian Center for games 3 and 4. Obviously, on the channel, I'll have the recaps after games 1 and 2. But I want to go in depth on this playoff series as I do call the games on Rogers TV in Barrie. Cannot wait. Playoffs just around the corner. And yeah, we'll see how this series goes. Thanks again for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Talk to you again soon.